Hey, it's Joel Davis, wide receiver for Bethune-Cookman. You are here listening to On the Fence Side.
It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fence side. It ain't the left side or the
Thank you,
right
Solo
side.
D. Welcome to another episode of On the Fence Side here with Kat and Paul Pickin. As we approach the NFL draft, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and on iHeartRadio. We are breaking down the Dolphins' top 5 needs heading into the NFL draft, some more clearly defined than others, some interesting situations where the Dolphins can go. They do have 5 picks in the first 4 rounds, a first rounder, a second rounder, a third rounder, and 2 fourth rounders, as well as a 6th and 2 sevenths. They'll be without a 5th round pick as a result of them trading for Stephon Anthony last year. Paul, let's get right into it. Your number 5 need as the NFL draft approaches.
For me, the 5th need, even though it's an important one, I know Miami's got Frank Gore as a backup running back, but I still think they need to add some young depth there. So for me, the running back position is still a need for this team. So it'd be my fifth need for the Dolphins heading into the draft.
Mine would be running back. I see up to 12 running backs in this draft that I would take in the first 4 rounds. And really, when you look at it, Kenyon Drake needs a running partner for the future. I mean, Drake is somebody who didn't touch the ball a lot at Alabama, and other than the second half of his second year here, hasn't touched the ball a lot in the NFL either. So if you start having Kenyon Drake and expect him to be a 350 to 400 touch guy, it's just not going to happen. I mean, Frank Gore, I hope he assumes that role of just leader / coach / trying to get to 4th all time in rushing yards, but not necessarily somebody who is going to be a long-term running mate there with Kenyon Drake. My 4th need is probably lower on the totem pole than Paul's. It's going to be tight end. You know, and when you look at the depth chart, it's probably the top need for the Dolphins if you look at just pure talent position by position. 2 reasons that it is lower for me is, first of all, the Dolphins have a lot invested in their top 4 receivers, Parker Stills, Amendola, and Albert Wilson. Secondly, if the Dolphins are reverting a little bit more to a Mike Martz style of offense, that tight end might just be a blocker in this offense. And maybe you don't necessarily have to take one in the first couple of rounds, even though the value may dictate that they will. Paul, what would be your 4th need?
For me, the 4th need here, and this probably won't be super popular, but I'm going to say it's the safety position. I do think Rashad Jones needs a better running mate. I think T.J. McDonald is better in that rover-type role where he's kind of up in the box a little bit with a little less responsibility, kind of a hybrid between linebacker and safety. And I know the depth behind them is just garbage at this point. But having McDonald and Rashad Jones on the field is a decent pairing out there. So I can't put it as one of the top 3 needs given some of the other needs that this team has. So for me, the safety position is the number 4 need for this team.
My number 3 need for the Dolphins is going to be quarterback. You know, when I look at the position here, Ryan Tannehill's, if he can come back and play at the level that he was playing when he tore his ACL, you know, in his last 8 games, he had a quarterback rating of over 100 on a team that was 7-1 in his last 8 games. I hope he comes back and resumes that. But he's going to be 21 months removed from playing the quarterback position when he starts. Luckily, the Dolphins approaching OTAs, he should be a full go for that. And they've made a little bit of a long-term commitment with him. The backup is Brock Osweiler. And if you thought Jay Cutler was bad last year, if something happens to Tannehill again, it's going to be worse with Brock Osweiler. So we've been pounding the table for years and years and years for the Dolphins to draft a quarterback, invest in a quarterback, at least in the middle rounds, and I think this might be the year that happens. Another interesting stat, too, at the quarterback spot, the last time the Dolphins have drafted a quarterback in rounds 3 through 5 was 1990 when they drafted Scott Mitchell in the 4th round. I think it's time to get some developmental talent in at that spot. Paul, what's number 3 on your list?
I'm actually in agreement with you on the quarterback spot, which it feels weird to say, and I know Dolphins Twitter is going absolutely mad for Baker Mayfield. I don't think Miami needs to go quarterback in the first 3 rounds. I agree with you on the developmental piece. I think there are some gems later in the draft. And it is a little bit scary to say that if Ryan Tannehill goes down, the season's probably lost. But that's true of most teams if their starting quarterback goes down. I kind of like David Fales a little more than I like Brock Osweiler. But, again, it's a scenario that if Tannehill goes down, Miami's just pretty bare. Their best bet is either the failed Brock Osweiler or raw talent David Fales. So they do need to look in a later round here or a middle round to grab a guy to come in and develop behind Tannehill. But it can't be the highest need because the hope is if whoever they get doesn't see the field because Tannehill's healthy all year.
Some names to keep an eye on in the middle rounds, Luke Falk out of Washington State, who I actually really like. Dolphins took him actually in round 3. I wouldn't hate it. Mason Rudolph probably doesn't fall down to that third-round pick. Kyle Laletta from Richmond and Mike White from Western Kentucky. Just a few names to keep your eye on. Paul, how about number 2 on your list?
Number 2 for me is going to be the linebacker spot. They do need a linebacker, but they've got some young guys that are pretty talented. Kiko Alonso looks absolutely terrible, but they are getting Rake McMillan back this year. Stephone Anthony showed a little bit of promise last year. They've got some decent talent there. They do have to take a linebacker at some point in this draft. But I'd also say the fact that they can take a safety and what we talked about earlier with TJ McDonald playing a hybrid role, and the fact that most teams these days spend so much time in the nickel lowers this need for me, even though when we get to our first round targets, I know I'm going to have a few linebackers in there, as are you, as is any Dolphins fan that knows what they're talking about. But for me, it's the number 2 need just because there are other ways to fix that position.
Yeah, number 2 on my list is going to be free safety, actually. And why this is higher on the list for me than others, a couple of reasons. Number 1, Adam Gase said at the Dolphins breakfast the other day that they were not too pleased with the play of TJ McDonald and working with Rashad Jones, and they've spent a lot of money on that position too. And they also lost Michael Thomas, who not only was by far your top backup, but also one of your top special teams performers too. Walt Aikens has shown that he's not even playable on the field. Hopefully Maurice Smith, who showed some things last year before he unfortunately got hurt, steps up a little bit as well. But the Dolphins really do have a unique opportunity here to take advantage of a very deep free safety class, both in the first round as well as we get a little bit later in the draft with players like Quinn Balding and Armani Watts. It allows them to use TJ McDonald a little bit more creatively. The Dolphins have to get better this year with their speed in the middle of the defense. And if you don't take care of the linebacker spot and you have TJ McDonald out there at free safety again, I don't think you're taking care of that need and that speed in the middle of the defense. So free safety is going to be my second need. My number 1 is linebacker. And to me, at least on my board, it's a clear-cut number 1. They have 2 players that we'll talk about in our next segment who can really add a lot of speed to the middle of this defense. And if they take a linebacker here in the first round and pair him with Raekwon McMillan, and you still have, hopefully Kiko Alonso plays a little bit better than he did last year. You've also got Chase Allen and Stephone Anthony. You may be able to, with 1 draft pick, take this unit from a D to a B, just like that. And keep in mind, you really only play 2 linebackers in the NFL most of the time. Third linebacker usually gets about 30% of defensive snaps. So the Dolphins can really take care of this position, and one that really hurt them last year. Paul, I have a feeling what your top need is going to be, but I'm going to let you have the final say.
Yeah, you already touched on it a little bit earlier. For me, the tight end position is a big need for this team. I know they're looking to get to that Mike Martz-style offense, but for Miami, they can do that while adding explosive tight ends, and there are a number of tight ends in this draft that they can get in the second through the 4th round that really can add some explosion to this offense. And on top of that, we've got to stop counting on the development of Devontae Parker. We just haven't seen it. I know he's a wide receiver, but our top red zone threat going into the season this year is concussion-prone, tiny Danny Amendola. That's a pretty terrible way to look at going into the season. Miami's got to be able to score in the red zone. You get a big-bodied but explosive tight end like a Dallas Goedert, a Hayden Hurst, somebody like that. They can stretch the field, but they can also be that target in the red zone that can box somebody out and just win that jump ball. So for me, the tight end position is really barren for this team. Marquise Gray is all that's there, and I like Marquise Gray, but he's not exactly a fit for that Mike Martz-style offense either that you were talking about. So you've got to get somebody in that can block. You've got to get somebody in that can stretch the field, and there are targets in this draft that can do that, and it fits one of Miami's biggest needs.
Some other needs to keep an eye out for Maybe and Dolphins don't have a kicker right now, so keep an eye on Daniel Carlson and Cody Pinheiro, and I would not want one in the 4th round. Hopefully one slips to the 6th round. Carlson's from Auburn, Pinheiro's from Florida. I'm not sure if I'm saying that last one correctly. But, yeah, they need a kicker. Defensive tackle, I've seen a lot mocked to them too. You'd have to wonder if Vincent Taylor and William Hayes is good enough depth there. They might add another guy. And guard, it's a very deep class in the 2nd and 3rd round. Maybe there's some value there that gives the Dolphins a plug-and-play starter, allows them to use Jesse Davis more as a swing tackle on the offensive line. That will do it for our wrap-up of the Dolphins' top 5 needs. You are listening to On the Fin Side, Kat and Paul Picken. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and on iHeartRadio. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the Fin Side. Solo D, take us home.
It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fin side. Inside. It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fin side. Listen, Dolphins fans across the land all tuning in to see what Brian Cat and